Well, a couple weeks back, I came upon the phrase dignified dissent. And I don't remember where I read it, if it was in a magazine or a book or a blog post, or I just really don't remember. It could have been in a song lyric, podcast, I don't know. Let me list more things that it could have been in that I don't remember. Movies! No, I'm just kidding. But I wrote it down because I knew I wanted to talk about it sometime soon, and I guess the time is now. I'm a little bit past it being like super raw right now, but definitely still in it. And it's definitely not as like well thought out and constructed, I guess, as some previous conversations, because I'm just like, I don't know where I'm going to go with it, which is good. But when I'm talking about a dignified dissent, I was thinking of in the context of, well, again, I don't remember what the context was that I read it in, but I knew how it would apply to me in that moment and what I'm thinking of now, which is, a dissent. Normally, we're talking about going down. Going down how? Going down, is that positive or negative? Usually, it's seen as a negative thing. So, a dignified dissent. That's what I want to discuss, because I feel like I was very open and raw for a couple of weeks, if not months, lately, and things have been maybe with time or with distance, or I don't know what. They're definitely not where I want them to be, and I'm in some control of that. But there's definitely whatever. I don't know. I'm still pretty open and raw and not feeling great. But I've been able to at least control my expression a little better. Maybe it's because I'm feeling things at not such an extreme that I was. I feel like I'm feeling things at an extreme still, but like just not in the same way. So anyway, we're talking about deep sads. We're talking about just like really just a lot of emotions and things, and especially the deep sads. So again, I can't remember the context, and maybe I need to do better at writing that down when I leave a note for myself. So like, oh, this will be good for the vlog. This will be a good conversation starter, and I can still talk about it, but I just wish that I had the context and remembered that. But anyway, I was thinking about that, a dignified dissent, and how like I was expressing to my social media and stuff my dissent, and it was not very dignified. I was just real and open, and just it was very little. What's the word I want to use? There was very little filter from what I was actually feeling to what I was expressing. I didn't like get processed into like this very constructed expression that was whatever. Like it was just sometimes it was just very much in the moment. Right now, I need to express something, and sometimes that can be really cringy. And that's just, I don't want to say that I judge myself harder than anyone else, because I think it's pretty. I was gonna say I judge everyone really hard, so it's pretty equal, I think. But obviously I'm biased, and I don't want to like judge myself and hurt my own feelings. I don't know. Like I think, yeah. As an artist too, people always say like you're your own worst critic, and I'm like, yep, I completely understand that, and I do judge myself pretty harshly, and whatever. Doesn't matter. Everyone has different lines of what they think might be cringe or not. Anyway, there are definitely times where I'm like, I think this is going to be cringe later, or it is now. I'm going to look back on this and not necessarily like it, but I just felt the need to post something. And despite any judgment or whatever, it was just like, that is the real thing I'm feeling. That is the real thing I'm expressing, and it just needs to be out there. So I was just thinking about this notion of a dignified dissent, and I think that like there's a part of me that really would feel like, yeah, I would really prefer to express my negative emotions, my coping, like the emotions I'm using to cope or whatever, like my sads and whatever feelings, no matter what extreme feelings. If I'm like in a bad place and I want to express something, I would like to. I can tell you the context for dignified dissent. I don't think that wherever I got that phrase from, I don't think they were talking about expressing that dissent. I think they were talking about appearing. I guess that's expression. No matter how it is that you are communicating, whether it just be not through social media or not pictures or whatever, there's a way that you are carrying yourself, and people might know, oh wow, they got like divorced, or like, oh yeah, I heard that their mom just died and now they're kicked out of their house, or like they're in rehab, or whatever is something that could be seen as like you are not in a good place, right? I think that you can do that and appear to be taking it all in stride and not upset by it, and just like you got a plan or you don't, or you're well put together. No matter what, you're well put together. But I'm fairly sure, because this is life, that there's a moment, or maybe several moments, or maybe several hundred moments in your life that you feel like you have a lack of control. And I mean, obviously people handle a lack of control differently than other people. You have a lack of control, you don't know what's happening, you're maybe very stressed or anxious or confused, mixed emotions, unprecedented experiences that are happening, and whatever else, and you might be feeling super chaotic and don't know what to do with how to get through. And when I get like that, I definitely feel the need to express things more, not less. Which leads to, in the very heat of the moment, those expressions are definitely not dignified. Afterwards, they can become so, because I have more time to slow down and reflect on that and see my situation. But like in times of urgency, like that's the thing, my anxiety, when I'm dealing with certain things, especially the unknown, or just extreme sadness is another thing that I like really, really dread, because I don't know how to cope with it very well. Those are times where I'm like, this is just neat. Like I said, there's not very much of a filter, and therefore my expressions, like, I don't know, I'm having a descent, or like if I'm having a breakdown, or if I'm like not doing well, then it definitely appears that way, and it's like, oh shit, like something's going wrong there. Or like, it's like, man, like, yeah, I don't think John's doing very well. And it's like, I don't even have to say those words, like, hey, I'm not doing very well. Like, it just is like obvious, because of what I'm expressing and how I'm expressing it and when I'm expressing it and where I'm expressing it and all those things. And I don't want to be apologetic for that. And part of me wants to be like, oh, I want to curate what I show people, right? Like as an artist, you decide when you finish a piece, when you think it's good enough, when it's done, whatever, where are you going to show it, how are you going to show it, how are you going to let people know? Like, it's representing you. Every expression is representing you. So obviously having some control over how you express things is a human tool that's needed to be exercised. And I would like to get better at that for sure. But I guess part of being better is like, I don't know. Again, there's certain moments where it's like, it's not that I have an inability, it's not like I don't have control over what I'm expressing and how, but I feel like that is my coping mechanism. Like sometimes social media is a coping mechanism for me, because it's there and I can express something and maybe nobody sees it. Like if I put something on my story and it's just like this intense feeling or this line or two that's just like, ugh, I am in the midst of despair and I'm expressing something, I could look at that later and it could have 0 views and it won't matter. Like, it's just the fact that I did something and it's out there, and it's not... I've talked before about like connection and loneliness and mortality and anxiety and how all those things like work together, and how they apply to me. And the thing is that sometimes when I'm like in extreme emotions and I'm expressing something, it's very much just the act of doing it. And it's like, yeah, but you could write that down on paper and that's it. And like, yes, I could, but there's something, I don't know, there is some thing in me, I don't know why or whatever, but there's a thing that's just like, if there's an opportunity for it to be seen, then there's an opportunity for connection, even if nobody reaches out, even if nobody says, oh, hey, how are you doing? Like, I don't want someone being like, hey, are you okay? Like, that's not what I want. But if someone were to identify with the message, and even if I don't even know it, They could be like, oh shit, like that's some real shit, and like whatever. Like I'm not looking for words of encouragement, or even someone to respond, but there's an opportunity there that it can reach somebody, and there's also an opportunity that someone could give me a genuine expression back that says like, oh, like I've been there, it sucks. Like they could give me like advice, and sometimes it would be frustrating and annoying, and sometimes not. Like unsolicited advice is incredibly, it's a very fickle thing to receive, because you're not in the mood sometimes for it, and people are just trying to do something positive most times when they do that, not all the time. And it's just like, yeah, but I don't know if I want that anyway. I mean, but there's an opportunity there for someone to connect, and sometimes that means something. Sometimes that helps. Sometimes it doesn't. But for someone to reach out and connect, and that's the thing. Someone to talk to sometimes is useful. Sometimes for me, it's not at all. Sometimes people reach out and they're like, "Hey, you can talk if you want." I'm like, "Yeah, thanks, but I'm okay." Like, I don't know what it is about it, but it's the act of expressing, for me, needs that extra element of being seen. It just, I don't know why. It just does. It's just there, and it's interesting because like before real like social media, before that term took off, I mean, I was writing poetry, and this is like grade 8. This is like early 2000s, late 90s, and poetry forums were a thing. I was writing poetry before I knew what a poetry forum was, or a forum in at all, any kind of forum. I didn't know anything about that. I didn't have a computer at home the whole time I was in high school, so I was using the school computers. But it was this thing, and I've talked about this before. I don't remember what the title was for whatever episode that was. But I was writing because I just needed to write. And I kept those to myself. And generally there was no audience for that. No one saw them. But when I did discover this poetry forum, I was like, wow. And I started posting it on there. And again, very rarely did someone comment, or like, I don't even remember if there was another way to give feedback. I don't think there was like a thumbs up and thumbs down thing or whatever. It was just like sometimes people left comments. But it was just like, and I would check them. I checked them for sure. It wasn't like I left it there and never looked at it, but it was just the act of putting it somewhere was an extra element to me of like, there's a thing there now, and people exist and can view, like it exists in the realm of like this broader thing, and because it exists there, people can connect with it. Thus, it's like they're connecting with me, or a part of me that I've put out there, even though I may never speak to that person. They may never speak to me. There's just this weird thing with that type of connection. And this is going off the rails, of course, but dignified dissent. I've been struggling with like, should I calm down before I express anything? I don't want to do that. I don't think I can do it, but suppressing that desire, like, what is the outcome? The outcome is like, let's say, for example, that sometimes I express these very extreme and strong emotions on my art social media. People can interpret that. They get, I don't know. That's the thing. It's like branding. I don't want to worry about branding. Should just be natural. It just be what I am. You know what I mean? And everyone has parts of themselves that are secret and hidden, and you never know someone fully and truly. And I mean, I don't think the person themselves knows themselves 100% truly ever. But I mean, there's parts that are hidden. There's parts that are just not there for everybody. You choose what to express. You choose how you let someone into your life, and that's through social media as well. And I don't want to project a facade, but the thing, everyone is projecting only what they want to project. That's just how it is, and that's social media or just in person before the internet existed. Like, you choose how you present yourself. So that is part of my brand, is to be that expressive, I guess. And like, I'm not really concerned that much, but that's what I'm talking about. This is a thing that like I consider, but not a lot. I'm not really concerned with people like liking it or disliking it, or someone thinks I'm super cringy or whatever. Like, there's a part of me that is judging myself, and sometimes that's through the eyes of someone else, and being like, wait, if I saw that, or like, I wonder how that looked. You know what I mean? I'm like, well, I guess it just looked like I was having a really rough night. That's how it looked. And I was having a really rough night. Therefore, that's it. Like, I'm not, deleting the post or whatever. I mean, there's been a few times where I put something up and then like an hour later I was like, that was expressed in a way that is, it's weird. Like, it'll misrepresent me, but I posted it. So in that moment, it represents me perfectly because I felt okay doing it. I worded it in a way and then realized, like, I don't know, but it'd be like a first draft of a poem that perfectly represents you in that moment, but you would edit it or make another pass at it or whatever, and then be like, this is really what I wanted to say. It's a weird notion, thinking about that, like a first draft or like what you immediately say is actually representing you, but you want to like rein things in a bit. Anyway. Yeah, again, the dignified dissent thing. Like, there's a lot of times where I feel like, okay, control yourself. Like, I definitely have that, not just to me, I mean, for other people, that I definitely have that urge to be like, okay, like, this isn't the time or place for that, this is whatever, and those are just my standards is the wrong word, my lines, the way that I like things balanced, whatever. It's just my judgments. And I know that. But, like, I have things that I'm like, I like that, or I don't like that, or that crosses a line. I'm like, get a hold of yourself. Like, we're in public, we're whatever. Or, like, did you really have to overshare that? And, like, for that person, it wasn't oversharing, or oversharing is a part of it. What does that even mean? Like, I feel like, TMI and oversharing are just, like, that's all up to interpretation, obviously. Like, it's obvious. I shouldn't have to say that it's obvious. I feel like a dignified dissent could be a part of just your natural way of expressing stuff, right? Some people have a dissent that you don't know about because they don't express anything at all about it. I definitely like to share a lot and express a lot, and like, it's a coping mechanism for me, and it's that weird thing with connection, despite the fact that someone might not actually talk to me about it or reach out or form any type of relationship through words at all, to be like, hey, like, I really felt that and thank you. Like, I don't know, when every once in a while someone does say that and I'm like, oh, that's cool, but like, that's where it ends, and I don't feel like it's not like it gives, like, I don't know, I appreciate the fact that someone is willing to communicate with me, but I don't know how to explain it. It's not like, wow, that's what I was looking for, and like, go me, and like, that's a pat on the back or something. It's just like, that's just a thing that happened, and whatever, like, I don't know. And there's times where I really, really appreciate someone communicating a lot, and it does mean something. So, where am I going with this? A dignified dissent seems like, again, for some people, I think that would be very natural for them to do, but it's also because it's probably been practiced so much that they are curating their expression, and that's just the natural way that they do it. So, like, I mean, I curate my expression too. This is the thing. I'm getting into a loop, and I keep having to qualify things. I don't think I don't know how to... I think any type of expression for me... Not any type. I think me as a person expressing stuff can't fit under a certain umbrella, period. If I'm expressing happy things, or sad things, or angry things, or just things in general, they're just under the umbrella of John. They're in the stream of John, not dignified, or proper, or erratic, or chaotic. Like, I guess chaotic in the fact that no, it can't, like, I was going to say that it's everywhere, but I mean, everywhere also means that they're constructed and carefully tailored sometimes, because sometimes my writing is that. Sometimes my writing is just stream of consciousness, and sometimes it's like I've edited that a couple times and I really, really like that line, and I like worked really hard on a line or two to make sure the words were perfect. I don't know. Dignified dissent. I definitely have made judgments about people that are crashing and burning publicly. And I think this conversation helped me realize that it's such a stupid thing to say, like, this conversation made me realize the past couple years, if not more than a couple, I have been way more empathetic and understanding of just people's situations that I am not aware of, right? And therefore become a lot less judgmental, even though I still am a lot, but a lot less than I used to be, and it's something I continue to realize that I am changing and working on, because it's not like an active work that I'm doing, it's just through time and reevaluating, and it's not like a super active thing that I sit down and tell myself, you really need to work on this, and how are you going to work on it? Having these conversations, I guess, is an active part of that, so never mind. It is active, because I'm working on it right now by talking and realizing things. That, yeah. Yeah, I like, this got to a place, I just hit a wall, because, like, I think that there are times where holding something in is a lot worse for that person than letting it go in that moment. Letting it go for people to see could have its own damage in the future or consequences or whatever that could be also negative, but it's like a lesser of two evil situation, because sometimes holding sometimes you just need immediate relief, and sometimes that's going to come through not caring about your actions in that moment. You can't. You just like yeah. There are times where there's like a mental break or an emotional one where there's a snap and there's just not a lot that you feel you can control. And if you don't feel like you can control, or you're not even processing it, it's so fight or flight sometimes that it's not something you're processing actively. It's just immediate action, reaction to stimuli, which is just completely, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a primal, instinctive thing that you're not thinking about. It's just doing. So, yeah. I think that a dignified dissent at times, unless it's your natural state, but maybe it's your natural state, I don't know. I think that I can gracefully express myself if I'm in the mood to. And other times it's just a raw, no filter expression. But someone who curates a dignified anything all the time is probably not being real. Because I think that there are times where we are so overwhelmed. I mean, you could just not express anything, right? You could just choose not to express anything whatsoever. But there's times where you get so incredibly overwhelmed that if you are to express something, then it's probably going to not look very polished, and I want to keep away from using the word dignified all the time, but it's not going to look very polished or proper or correct, put together, and it's going to, you're not a PR firm. Like, you're not like, I mean, you can be. Man, this is off the rails. This is stupid. That's what happens sometimes. These conversations just completely fall apart. I just think that, like, expressing the real means a lot of different things. And there's not necessarily, there isn't one specific way to go about it except for just what's real to you at that moment. Or, yeah, and at that moment. And that's the thing, is like, it's like someone being a jerk is different than someone doing a jerky thing. So it's like someone having a moment where they are out of their head doesn't mean that they are an insane person, just because they have an action or a reaction or something in a moment of whatever is going on that they didn't act in a way that we thought would be fitting to the scenario and within the bounds and confines of proper behavior. And I was going somewhere with this to wrap this up, and I have forgotten. I think that as long as you are true in the moment, that's all that could be expected of you. And sometimes the moment is irrational. So I think that a lot of people just choose not to express in the moment, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that if you want to express something and you don't express it because no, see, every time I word it, it just sounds wrong. I think that if I'm gonna have this like a expression right now because I'm really overwhelmed, and it's one of those times where I'm like, that might be cringy, that might be TMI, I'm being too open and whatever, but I need to do it. That's fine. I think that if I tell myself, yeah, I'm just gonna slow down and like I'm okay, and there's something I want to express and I want to get out, sometimes time passes and I never express that thing because I don't need to. Sometimes it's still there, and I do need to express it eventually, but I've had more time with it. I've processed it better, differently, slower, and can construct a more dignified expression, which might be about not a good thing. And then there's times where just I don't feel like talking at all. This is why sometimes I don't post anything at all for a couple days because I am very busy, overwhelmed, stressed, anxious, whatever, and I don't. It's like I live at extremes. So either I'm posting like a bunch of stuff in those moments because I'm so overwhelmed I need to express, or sometimes I'm so overwhelmed that I just can't express anything, and it's like difficult, which is such a stupid thing. It's difficult when it's really easy to just make a post about something completely unrelated, but I don't like making posts about things that are completely unrelated. I've got pictures of things, like lately I've been like posting pictures of my black book, old black book. I took a bunch of pictures of it, and like I like to express things from the present, not so much the past, unless the past is having an effect on my present. So having this weird pressure to like post things on social media to keep a following, or just because I genuinely want to express some things, but they're not like what's weighing on me now, but I don't know how, like, whatever. The point is, whatever's real in that moment. So like I feel disingenuous by posting something that has nothing to do with what I'm feeling. And yet sometimes I do it because I just want to, like, it's not that I'm not feeling, like, it's like a nothing thing. Posting a picture from my black book and saying, hey, this is like this cool thing, is like a nothing thing to me. It's like, I want to share it because it's a cool thing to share, check this out, but it's not about me right now, what I'm feeling, and therefore it feels like it doesn't matter. And if it feels like it doesn't matter, why am I posting it? But like I said, because it's something that has a function and purpose, it just doesn't feel like it in the moment, but I have nothing in that moment to give, or I've got too much to give and don't know how to give it, or because I don't want to express it, or I just don't know how to express it. Man, again, this is the most off the rails conversation I've ever had. Like, probably for sure, hands down, maybe 100%, possibly. I think, again, that however you're expressing yourself, especially in times of crisis, as long as it's real to you in that moment, I would say that's good and that's important, and as long as it's not hurting anyone else, obviously. And sometimes, I mean, those are moments of growth too. Sometimes those are moments where you need to reflect on what you expressed and how and why, and maybe that you realize you shouldn't have, because of whatever, and that you can do other things rather than reaching for that. Because I also don't want social media to be a crutch for me. There's a difference between it being a useful tool for me to express something so that I feel a little better, and if it is going to have negative consequences, and if I just didn't express it and found another alternative in that moment, I wouldn't have that consequence. Does that make sense? It probably does. Why am I asking you rhetorical questions you can't answer anyway? Okay, I'm going to wrap things up. Dignified dissent. I thought that was going to go way different. I didn't know where it was going to go, but I definitely didn't see it going into like 87 different directions. But there it is. I will see you on another time.